This week, UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese is in Canada after submitting her latest report to the United Nations General Assembly. It's the second report she submitted in which she makes the legal case that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, a charge that Israel denies. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, Israel's ongoing military assault on the enclave has killed more than 43,000 Palestinians since last year. According to UNICEF, at least 14,000 children have been killed. The UN estimates that as of May this year, 10,000 Palestinians are still buried under the rubble, including children. Francesca Albanese joins us now to share the findings from both of her reports. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we get into the findings from your reports, I think it would be helpful if you could describe what a special rapporteur actually does and then describe your particular mandate.
Absolutely. Special rapporteurs are independent experts of the United Nations. So the United Nations appoints individuals who are considered experts on their own specific domain. It might be a thematic issue like right to food, right to health, prevention of torture, or a specific area in the world where human rights issues are of particular concern. This is the case for Iran, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and occupied Palestinian territory. Mine is one of the longest mandate ever created. It's now 32 years on, and I am the 8th and first woman to serve as a special rapporteur. My mandate includes monitoring, investigating, documenting violations of international law committed by Israel. In fact, this is what the resolution says, committed by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, namely the Gaza Strip, West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and report to the United Nations twice a year. Once to the General Assembly, once to the Human Rights Council. So my reports are the outcome of my observation of the facts on the ground and their legal qualifications. Now, one important feature of this mandate is that I should be allowed to visit the country at least twice a year. And Israel has prevented myself and 3 special rapporteurs before me since 2008 from delivering this important function, which, I mean, in a way, the occupied Palestinian territory offers, unfortunately, fortunately, the most documented human rights picture in the world, because there are international UN, Israeli, Palestinian human rights organizations, so we have a detailed picture. But still, I mean, as an independent expert, I should be able to observe and report also what I see with my own eyes, what I perceive. One other thing is that this mandate is often accused of bias because the resolution founding it only focuses on the violations committed by Israel. But this is a product of history because 32 years ago, the Palestinian Authority didn't exist yet. And therefore, when the mandate was created, it was focusing on Israel. However, I have been the first special rapporteur focusing also on violations committed by the Palestinian authorities, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and the de facto authorities. Has it changed the perception and the attitude? Is my mandate? Unfortunately, no.
So let's get to your first report this year, which you submitted in March. And in it, you said that Israel had committed, quote, at least 3 of the acts prescribed in the Genocide Convention, and those were 1, killing members of the group, 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, and 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Now, that was from your first report in March 2024. We're now in November. How has the situation in Gaza changed since then, particularly in North Gaza, where we've seen an offensive since early October of this year by the Israeli Defense Forces?
I would like to spend 1 minute on this insidious crime that is genocide. Genocide is a crime that consists of the acts you mentioned, but supported by a specific intent, dolus specialis, mens rea, like the intention to destroy a group in whole or in part through killing, creation of conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of a group, etc. And even before my report, there had been at least 3 warnings from 30 United Nations independent experts who are legal experts in their own domain, warning of the risk of genocide, serious risk of genocide. And then as of November last year, we concluded that a genocide was unfolding. Then in January this year, the International Court of Justice concluded that there was a plausible risk of irreparable harm done to the Palestinians under the Genocide Convention, meaning recognized the plausibility of genocide and imposed a number of measures on Israel, including cessation of acts that would lead to genocide. The court issued new provisional measures in March and then in May. And despite this, despite my report, despite even another International Court of Justice proceeding declaring that Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, including in Gaza, is unlawful and must be withdrawn, the settlements must be dismantled, Israel needs to make reparations, etc. This notwithstanding, not only Israel has intensified its destructive patterns toward the Palestinians in Gaza. Think that there are no more universities in Gaza. Everything has been bombed and leveled. 80% of houses. Imagine a city like Toronto with 80% of the homes destroyed. 33 out of 36 hospitals completely damaged or destroyed. No more schools, no more universities, no more arable land, no more ways to produce food. And on top of it, 45,000 people killed, and 70% of them from October last year till now have steadily been women and children. Why so? Because these are the demographics of Gaza. And this showed that the attack on the population has been indiscriminate. Now, these would already be offered the possibility to infer that the only reasonable intent is to destroy, because look at the scale of the attack, the nature of the attack, the destructiveness. But in my last report, I go one step further and I see that there is direct evidence of intent. One doesn't even need to speculate, investigate, because they've said it. Israeli leaders have seized the opportunity of October 7 to escalate the erasure of the Palestinians from what remains of Palestine. Look at what has happened over the past 57 years. Taking off the land, segregating the Palestinians in smaller and smaller reserves, in fact. Area B under the Oslo Accords, meaning Palestinian towns and villages. These are the only places where Palestinians can live. On the agricultural land, the farming land, the resources, the water basins, has all been taken by Israel. And Gaza has been reduced to a ghetto where 2 million people, over 2 million people were living deprived of most necessities, including before October 7. And then Jerusalem is considered next. After October 7, Israel has escalated its violence, and it has been an intentional violence declared against all the Palestinians in Gaza as Amalek, to be destroyed, including the children and the mother, including their means for survival. Everyone has been deemed killable, everything destroyable, because they were terrorists. There was a nation responsible for October 7. So you see, and now this is metastasizing to the West Bank. It's colonial erasure, because Israel's project in the occupied Palestinian territory, it's colonial expansion. And Canada should realize this, because Canada has been doing that to its own indigenous population, the original the traditional custodians of the land who live in this country, which is built on their land, and sovereignty has never been ceded. For the Palestinians, it's not different, but the Palestinians are now being exterminated because, and this is very specific to Israel, Israel doesn't want to assimilate the Palestinians because the objective is to Judaize what remains of Palestine. And because of this, the Palestinians, by their own life and identity, with their Palestinianness and their legal claims to self-determination, return, etc., represent a threat. And the land is key here, because the land for the Palestinians, as for any indigenous people, is the place where, no, it's not the place where they live, it's who they are. Hence, colonial erasure.
You really do, and that's the title of your latest report, right? Genocide is colonial erasure. You really do use that settler colonialism framework or lens to apply here. How does that lens apply if Jews feel that Israel is their ancestral homeland?
Even, let me say something. Even if I didn't dispute that, and even if I forgot that the founding fathers of Israel have used the word colonization steadily in their plans. They were telling, before the creation of the State of Israel, they were trying to persuade the Brits to allow them to colonize the land of Palestine, as the British had colonized India and the French had colonized Algeria. Even if we forget that, even if we don't want to see Palestine all over in the history during the even the 30 years of British mandate before the State of Israel was proclaimed, even if we don't want to see the colonial project, the colonial mentality, let's forget this. Let's assume that all the Israelis have the right of self-determination, have an inherent right of self-determination to Palestine and Israel. Does it give them the title to expel another indigenous group? Of course not. They didn't have it 75 years ago in historical Palestine, most of which became Israel today. Israel exists, protected members of the United Nations, but what did give Israel the right to kick out 350,000 Palestinians on top of the 750,000 Palestinians who had been expelled in 1947-49? These 350 Palestinians were displaced in 1967, and their homes were destroyed, and most was taken from the army. What gives the Israelis title to do that? And what is Israel? What does give Israel title to claim land in northern Gaza today, in eastern Gaza today, in West Bank, in East Jerusalem, if we don't see the colonial nature of Israel's claims, we really miss the forest for the trees.
You said something a few minutes ago along the lines of Israel wants to Judaize Israel or not assimilate Palestinians into Israel. I might have misquoted you there, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about why you believe that, or what evidence you have for that assertion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've used the settler colonial framework, not intentionally. I realized that it was unavoidable since I started writing my first report. This has been a journey for me. Because in my first report in November 2022 was about how Israel's occupation violates the law of self-determination, which is a jus cogens. This is an obligation on all member states to make sure that every people are entitled, have the possibility to enjoy the right of self-determination, which means the right to exist as a people on a given land, determining themselves politically, culturally, to enjoy their religion or their religions, and to and to use, thrive to the resources that the territory offers in a sovereign and independent fashion, which is what Israel's occupation precludes, prevents, as it has always also been recognized unequivocally by the International Court of Justice in July this year. This regime of annexation, of racial segregation and apartheid is unlawful in its totality and must be dismantled militarily, the settlements, etc. I already said that. Because this constitutes a settler colonial endeavor, which has also manifested, and this is what I analyzed in my second report, through mass incarceration of the Palestinians, young and children. Almost 1 million people have been arrested and detained by Israel in appalling conditions, often squalid conditions, often subjected to torture, adults and children alike, with a significant impact on the local population. Of course, the settler colonial paradigm is ingrained in my reading. And the thing is that this doesn't want to be acknowledged and seen by Israel first and foremost, and by other Western states, who frankly, who are they? Either countries from which colonialism and its most insidious form, settler colonialism, originated and spread across the world, or settler colonies like Canada, Australia, the United States, and New Zealand. These are the countries who are backing Israel. It's very sad. It's unconscionable for me. And this is, I'm saying, it's one of the realization of these times, but the nexus, the link between the settler colonial powers is not gone, and it survives. And I was telling you before starting this interview, for me, the journey through Canada has been, in many respects, as it was the one in Australia and New Zealand, life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because while in the United States, the Native Americans are completely invisibilized, in Australia, in New Zealand, and here, they have a strong voice, marginalized as they are, but they are audible. They are scholars, they are intellectual, musicians, they're really visible. And when I hear their voice and their stories, I know that settler colonialism is not an instance of the past. It's still real, it's still current, despite the attempts of the country, of the government to reckon with the past. From the indigenous perspective and from my perspective as a human rights lawyer and just a visitor to the country, I see the past is still present.
I want to get more about your trip in Canada in just a second, but let's stay with genocidal intent for a second. In your reports, and people can read those reports themselves and see the citations, you make the argument that there are direct quotes, right, from the Israeli political and military leadership that suggest intent, as well as inferring from the scale of destruction. How is intent different to motive? Because I think there might be confusion about that too.
Completely. There are two elements that I really wanted to make clear in this report, and one is the fact that intent is not motives. I've heard several comments in between my first and second report saying, no, but it cannot be genocidal intent because Israel doesn't want to destroy the Palestinians. Israel wants to eradicate Hamas. As, by the way, parenthesis, as if it was eradicating a political movement which might have committed crimes, which has committed crimes against Israeli civilians. No question about that. No justification or condoning of criminal acts against civilians. However, eradicating Hamas means eradicating to eradicate a political system which is not a military objective. However, besides this, the other intention is, and we need to de-radicalize Gaza, or whatever it means, or liberate the hostages. Whatever the motives, what is the intent is not the idea in the mind of the genocidaire. It's the determination, is the moment the decision appears even before it forms in the mind of the genocidaire. And in fact, incitement to genocide is a crime, like genocide itself. And this is what Israel was ordered to investigate and prosecute by the International Court of Justice in January this year. Not only the judiciary has not done so, not only members of the cabinet have continued to pursue through policies the destruction of Gaza and orders that have gone from top to bottom and have resulted in turning the Israeli army made of young people into willful executioners of the genocidal plan. But also the parliament, other members of the government didn't stop any of these acts. Actually, they have been enabling it.
So the Israeli government has said that this is a war of self-defense in response to the October 7th attacks led by Hamas, which killed hundreds of innocent Israeli civilians. You've condemned those Hamas-led attacks. So how does international law reconcile Israel's position that this is a war of self-defense with genocidal intent?
Yeah, so first of all, even if there were self-defense, this could not be used to justify what Israel has done, because this is a genocide, and a genocide cannot be justified by self-defense. But also, even if there was self-defense, there are critical principles in international law during armed conflict, the principle of distinction between civilians and combatants, which has been completely blurred. So here is not a state against a state conflict. Here, it's an assault from the occupying power against the people it occupies. Of course, Israel had the right to protect itself on October 7, repelling the attack, arresting, detaining, prosecuting whomever. Instead, Israel has killed everyone. It's gone. It's past. It is to be accounted for, like there should be a full investigation on top of what the Commission of Inquiry of the United Nations has already concluded in June this year. But the International Court of Justice has said times in the case of the self-defense against the people it occupies, because it conflicts with their right to exist and the right to resist in the land that Israel unlawfully occupies.
Francesca, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.